Hey guys, I'm Robert Breaker and I'm in a place I've always wanted to be. Believe it or not, I am in the Dominican Republic. I've got a neat story for you. It's kind of a little bit of a tearjerker. It's a little bit sad, but I've always wanted to visit here because my uncle lived here. And when I was a kid, I only got to meet my uncle twice, and he's the reason I learned Spanish. I thought it was so cool that he could speak Spanish. And my uncle came here on a boat and never left. He fell in love with my Aunt Raquel, and he helped a guy start a pineapple farm. And unfortunately, my uncle was assassinated. And I was in Honduras, and I went as a missionary to Honduras, and I was there for just a few months when my grandpa died. And then a few months later, my dad called and told me that my uncle had been murdered here in the Dominican Republic. So he's the reason that I learned Spanish, and he's the reason for a lot of how I am. My dad always told me, he said, "You're just like your Uncle Doug." And I just find it fascinating that I'm able to come and be on the island where he's buried, somewhere here. And my Uncle Doug got saved from my dad. He came back from the Dominican Republic, and my dad led him to the Lord. And it's just a beautiful story. I know in heaven I'm looking for my dad, for my Uncle Doug, and for my grandmother who I led to the Lord. And my dad came here and stayed 2 weeks. That's the most my dad could take it. He said, "Too many mosquitoes, I don't like it." But I love it, and I'm glad that I learned Spanish, and I'm glad that my Uncle Doug was, although I only knew him a couple times in my life, that's the reason that I chose to learn Spanish, because I wanted to be like my Uncle Doug. So how many people have heard the gospel from that? How interesting how one life can affect the life of others. Now, how did my Uncle Doug die? Well, everyone called him Douglas Jesus because he looked like Jesus. He had a beard like this, but he was blonde and he had a little bit longer hair. And everybody that knew Doug called him Jesus. They said, "Hey, here comes Jesus." Well, he had a son and a daughter. And he was assassinated because whoever owned the pineapple farm, I guess, wanted his share because he wanted to get richer. And the story goes that he was in the car. And you know, Jesus died for you, right? Jesus died for us. Well, when the guys came out and shot at the car and killed my uncle in his red car, they found his dead body over the top of his, I believe it was the daughter, and it saved her life. So just like Jesus died for you to save you, my Uncle Doug, Jesus, died to save someone else. And it's just amazing to be here on the same soil where his body is buried. My grandparents didn't want him to leave. They were afraid something like that would happen. So when we got the phone call that he had died, no one spoke Spanish but me. So I was the one on the phone asking, well, what happened and where is he buried? And they said, well, we'll put a flag on him and send him back to America for being a vet. And I remember my grandparents said, no, he wanted to be here, leave him here. So somewhere on this island, in a debtor's grave, an unmarked grave, lies my uncle, Douglas Breaker. I loved him so much, I named my son Conrad George Douglas. We kind of turned it around, but to remind us of him, my uncle. And so that's the story. It's a little emotional. It's a little bit of a blessing to be here where he lived. What a beautiful island. But also what an amazing story that as he died for someone else. Well, Jesus died for you. Have you trusted Jesus yet? Have you come to him for salvation? Jesus saves.